Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. Today we have a special guest joining us. Peter Erskine is here. Great to see you.
Thanks, Mitch. Good morning.
Thanks for coming in.
My great pleasure.
So you're here at Sweetwater working on a project.
Here at Sweetwater, I've been a customer of Sweetwater for years, and my entire home studio is outfitted with gear that I purchased from Sweetwater. And not only purchased, but the folks here are so helpful in terms of either like setting up the Macintosh and all the gear to work together before they ship it.
Right.
Or giving advice over the phone. Tech support's always been wonderful. Because, I'm a drummer. I'm not an engineer, but I'm just enough of a propeller head that I like this stuff.
Sure.
And through a happy series of kind of accidents almost. Originally we were going to come here and do a residency for the purpose of working with and educating studio owners and engineers who would come watch us record, kind of like in a fishbowl.
Okay.
And the studio, of course, would work well for that because there's a lot of glass walls.
Right.
But then the timing didn't quite feel right to all concerned, and then our residency became, let's do an album.
Oh, great.
And we've always done our recording work in Los Angeles, so here we found ourselves, kind of strangers in a strange land. And Mark Hornsby's done a remarkable job recording us. The studio is state of the art, and everyone's so darn nice. Now, one of the working titles that I'm thinking of, at least this morning, is Back Home Again. The old song, Back Home Again in Indiana. Because I've always felt like an honorary Hoosier, even though I'm from the state of New Jersey. My parents brought me out here for the first time. I just turned 7. And Indiana University down in Bloomington was hosting, it was the 3rd annual National Stage Band Camp. And Stage Band Camp was what you had to call jazz camps back in the day. Jazz was a dirty word.
Sure.
And Stan Kenton is largely responsible for getting jazz into schools. And so in any event, my parents drove about halfway across the country from Atlantic City to Bloomington, and this is well before the days that the interstate highway system was complete.
Right.
I'm talking 1961. Wow. It was 55 years ago.
Wow.
And stepping outside from the hotel just reminded me of, Indiana, summertime in Indiana.
Right.
So I went to several years worth of summer camps in Bloomington, and then fell in love with the place and knew, even as a child, that was where I wanted to go to college. Excuse me. So I went to Indiana University after 3 years of study up in Interlochen, Michigan, the Interlochen Arts Academy. So basically I left home when I was 14.
Wow.
And went to that boarding school and then went to IU. And after I finished my freshman year, I got to go on the road with the Stan Kenton Orchestra. And so that began a 3-year touring odyssey.
Right.
And my school, I guess you could say, transferred from the campus of Bloomington, Indiana to being on the road.
Right.
And so I was learning in front of a lot of people and certainly had a lot to learn. Still do. But I did that, decided I wanted to go back to school, so I came back to Indiana with all intents of completing my college degree, but I became a dropout, joining Maynard Ferguson's band the next summer. So I was with Kenton from 1972 to 1975, and then Maynard 1976 to 1978. While touring with Maynard, I met Jaco Pastorius. He heard me play, and I think he heard something that he recognized, that he liked, and it turns out that Jaco and I had listened to a lot of the same music growing up. So he recommended me to join Weather Report, and I did. And while on tour with Weather Report, I met the woman who would become my wife. And in all other aspects, I think that really opened, a lot of doors for me.
Right.
So I moved to California, worked there with Weather Report, then made the big move to New York City because, to be a jazz musician, it just feels that you have to go to the home of contemporary jazz.
Uh-huh.
I certainly should have spent some time in New Orleans, but I did go to New York for 5 years. Then once we decided to get married and start our family, California was a more family-friendly place. We should have considered Indiana, though.
Yeah.
The Sweetwater facilities are so incredible, and most of the world can benefit from that wherever they are because
we can ship
the
anywhere.
nature of the internet and mail order business.
Right.
But this building is something else. The auditorium, the performance venue that can be electronically altered to resemble any performance space in the world. Now that might sound gimmicky, but I have to tell you, being in that room and hearing it turned into Carnegie Hall, I've been in Carnegie Hall. It sounded exactly like
It's
being
amazing,
in
isn't
Carnegie
it?
Hall. Yeah, it's the Loris system, right?
That's right, yeah.
I teach at the University of Southern California, and I would love nothing more than to get our dean and some of the other folks from the school here so they could witness and experience this. So that's great. The recording studio is great. And just getting to meet the people, meeting Chuck and all of you who make this thing work. Nothing else I've ever seen like it.
It's an amazing place, that's for sure. We're honored to have you here, have you visiting us.
Thanks.
So it's interesting that you met Stan Kenton at 7 and then later played with him at 18. At 7, were you already totally fixated on jazz, if you will? Is that something that you knew right from the start? That was the kind of music you wanted to get into?
I think so.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was very drawn to what later became called like world music. My father had a lot of recordings of music from all over the world, and of course, because I was interested in drums, he had these field recordings made in various parts of Africa. So I was exposed to music from like Ghana, Senegal, Nigeria. So mostly Western African music when I was quite young. And then of course Afro-Cuban stuff and Calypso and jazz. And in the early 60s, it seemed like everything was starting to, jazz was borrowing or stealing or letting itself be freely influenced by all these various kinds of music. And as a result, I think, in the mid to late 60s, coupled with the explosion, as it were, of rock music. I mean, most drummers my age or a little bit younger, the Beatles was the defining moment.
Sure.
Seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. I already had the bug, and in fact, when I saw the Beatles, I said, well, these guys are good, but I wonder what they'd sound like if Elvin Jones was playing drums, which probably would not have been such a good idea. But so I was a jazz snob in some respects, because I loved the music, and I felt almost as protective of it as enthused by it. Anyway, in the mid 60s to late 60s, early 70s, every day it seemed there'd be a new album coming out, and those records seemed like postcards from the future. I mentioned we're recording here, and I was thinking of calling the album Back Home Again because we're revisiting some stuff. So this isn't really a postcard from the future. This is kind of like looking through your collection of postcards.
Right.
With a little bit of a modern take on it. Anyway, short answer, yes. I mentioned to Mark Hornsby yesterday, we did a short interview in the studio, talking mostly about Tom and drums. And he just asked a simple question. What was your first drum set? And of course, simple or short answers are not my specialty. And I termed this first drum set, which was a conga drum and a small sizzle cymbal, that it functioned not so much as a drum set, but almost more like a compass. It pointed me in the direction of what I wanted to do. I'm a bit bemused being a professor at USC when students come, and I'll ask them, what other schools are you thinking of going to? And of course they apply to this school, that school, the other school, all fine schools.
Sure.
But when I went to college, Indiana University, that was the only school I applied to. And there's something good about specificity, I think. I'm always telling my students, you have to be specific and do things with intention. So, yeah, I knew where I wanted to go to school. I knew what I wanted to work on. And so there's never been a question mark like, geez, am I in the right line of work? I almost feel like I have no choice.
Right. Interesting. So now, from the perspective of having all these students come through USC at the Thornton School, have you found that groove and swing can be taught to those students, or is it something that somebody has to come in with that ability, or where does that come from?
Yes, I think it can be taught. If not taught outright, it certainly can be refined, and you can help with the direction. Oftentimes the teaching process is trying to help the younger musician or less experienced musician avoid some of the detours or mistakes that we can recall making. And so you hope to perform a valuable service by, hey, try this, trust me, this will save you a lot of time.
Right.
What can't be taught, unless you can inspire the reaction, is the passion. And the passion is what helps bring the edge, that impossible to define thing that when you listen to a piece of music, or you look at a drawing or a painting, or you hear a poem, that it touches you. And I'm not talking touchy-feely thing, but that communicates to you.
Sure.
And I had one student, and he was puzzled when I played him a performance of something that had a lot of passion. And he said, how do you do that? And I said, the technical answer is you just really need to care. I think I termed it more with I probably had a 4-letter word. You really need to give something. Anyway, and so most of my students, I sense that. It's that that feeling that what you're doing must need be done. You have to do it.
Right.
And then you balance that as a professional with serving the song, serving the project. Recently had a student come to me, former student, who's now a professional drummer, and he was playing me his own album, and he was calling it his art project. And he was a little bit disappointed because some of the solo moments they weren't the best that he could do. And so he felt he'd let himself down a little bit. But he was terming everything with this sort of paradigm of art and non-art. And I said, I don't know if you're going to like this, but to me, it's all art. So timely. A film's coming out next week called The Secret Life of Pets. Alexandre Desplat, a wonderful French composer, wrote the music, and there's a lot of drums in it. I also played drums on Cats and Dogs 2, The Revenge of Kitty Galore.
Right. Great stuff.
Yeah. It's all art. It's in the art of playing what must be played. If you all want the shortest, simplest, and maybe the best drum lesson I could possibly give, here it is. Just play what you want to hear. Play what you'd like to hear. The temptation is to play what you think you have to play.
Right.
Oh, there's famous drummer so and so, and there's the other there's the other drummers who live in my town. I hope they're going to like what I play. I can't control if someone will like what I play, but I can control my choices and help shape the music, and that's the fun.
Right.
It's all good.
Right. Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. You told a story where you and Michael Brecker were jamming, just the two of you, and he said something along the lines of, somebody sounds so great in one situation, not so great in another, and you took that as a inspiration to move forward so that you'd sound great in any situation.
Yeah, it didn't feel great at the time.
I'm sure, yeah.
He said, I've never, he was just looking at me. I said, what? And he said, I've never played with anyone who, on one hand, can sound so good, and on the other hand, sounds so bad.
Right.
And he was quick to say, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. He said, I'm
Mhm.
just kind of fascinated. A short while later, I was in a nightclub down in Florida, and Zoot Sims, great tenor saxophonist, was the guest. And he was playing with the local rhythm section, and the local rhythm section left some things to be desired. It wasn't like the greatest rhythm section in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And many a lesser musician would have maybe allowed himself or herself to get pulled down to that. He pulled them up. I mean, he came out, he sounded like Zoot Sims. And that's when Michael's remark, and this experience, boom, I had that kind of epiphany moment. I always felt as a drummer like, if I'm part of the team, and if the team was playing really well, it was easy for me to get a hit.
Sure.
Right. But I was very dependent on that, and that might have been a result of having spent so much time as a young musician playing along with recordings.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter what happened; you could fall off the drum seat, and the music would still keep going on.
Right.
And the epiphany was finally cemented in. I was waiting to check into a hotel in Europe. And back in those days, you had to fill out a lot of paperwork. Your passport number, where you live, occupation. Now, Eddie Gomez, who I was traveling with at the time, he used to always like to write things like skydiving instructor. But I wrote musician, and then as I was writing it, I said, wait a minute. Are you a musician? If you're a musician, then what do? You play. And if you play, you have to be able to play every time you play. And it's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I finally decided to grow up. And like, okay, every time I play. Now, this recording experience has been interesting because we're not in our comfort zone. We're working in a new environment, and because this project came about rather suddenly, the normal amount of pre-production we'd like to do with this kind of music, we're not just coming in and jamming. The first album, it was called Dr.
Right.
And if we show the graphic here, you'll see that it spells drum.
Right.
John Beasley and I spent quite a bit of time doing pre-production. So here we're sort of fleshing it out, or even kind of duking it out from our respective instruments and trying to talk through isolation booths, and somebody's always noodling, and of course all this is being video documented. Probably one of the less smooth experiences, just due to our kind of struggling with the music. But the neat thing is, I think my favorite recordings were recordings that weren't born of easy circumstance. You listen to a lot of jazz records that were made in 3 hours. They played, and I first really ran into this when I was working with Manfred Eicher, who produces and runs the ECM label.
Sure.
Talk about art music. And despite any amount of preparation, you'd get in there, and he, his first instinct, if he sensed any kind of comfort zone, was just to pull the rug out from under that. And it gives the creativity a little more, if I say urgency or edge, it might seem like it would not be comfortable to listen to, but it just crystallizes everything you know. And so when you hear the final result, and the professionalism will keep the smoothness that you want intact, you go, wow, that's much more than I thought we were doing or that we were capable of. So it makes me eager to want to come back here, because it is this haven, as it were. When you're home and you record, you go home and then you're just preoccupied with all that.
Sure, sure.
I go to my very nice hotel room at Hyatt Place. I'm not sucked into the home things too much. It's just darn email kind of sucks you back into reality.
Right.
We should make this an email-free zone.
Email-free zone, yes.
But you do have good internet here. So.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So check my Twitter.
Yeah.
Who's talking about me now?
That's awesome. Well, we'd love to have you come back anytime. Of course, you're always welcome.
Well, I'm going to plan on it if we can make it happen, because
Excellent.
it's fun, and I'm going to guess that this time of year is probably about the best time of year to.
It's the weather's beautiful right now. It's a gorgeous time of year to be here.
Spring,
Yeah, spring,
probably
yeah.
nice too. Spring.
Yeah, spring and fall and summer. When the winter's here is fairly mild, although compared to California, you maybe wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
So you play in a lot of styles, from big band to fusion to Mary Chapin Carpenter to a lot of orchestral things that you're doing. You play with a lot of different musicians. Jocko is a hard-driving bass player. Do you adapt your drumming to those situations, or do you go in and say, this is my style and this is what we're going to do?
I love Mary Chapin Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
She's just wonderful. Drummer's first job is to provide rhythmic information to the band. So that's the first thing I need to take care of. Beyond that, of course, it's serving the project. And as I mentioned before, the art is in the craft of doing that. And it may seem that I'm being selfless, very generous. In fact, it fits in with my need to control things a bit, because, as a drummer, if I play softer, or if I just shift things this way or that way rhythmically, it draws the listener, and it draws the musicians in. I become like the puppet master. I'm really getting to control the strings. And it's not just the need for control, but musically I like having the ability to influence things to some extent.
Sure.
And then allowing myself to be open to, just like a conversation, to what you say to me. It's endlessly fascinating and fun. I remind my students, I say, Clint Eastwood, especially in his heyday when he played these pretty tough guys.
Right.
Capable of all sorts of mayhem. You wouldn't hear Clint shouting out his intentions.
Mm-hmm.
He always kind of got real quiet. And then, the camera comes in, the action, everything stops for a moment. And so there's a lot of power in a whisper.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a little bit of an operating principle I do at the drums of all places. Just for me, the music works better when you don't push it too hard, when you don't try too hard, and when you leave a little bit of space. Then for all this over analyzing that I sometimes do, it's nice to leave the other musicians and indeed the listeners with a question. I don't think music should answer all the questions. I think it should provoke some of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, it seemed like, especially with fusion stuff, it seemed like, boom, we're gonna answer everything, and here it all is. A note won't be left unplayed.
Right.
Guilty as charged, Your Honor. So I've just found myself drawn more to musical settings or a musical approach that just, takes shadow into account and space, and then it just seems like more interesting things happen.
Right, right. Along those lines, you have said that things actually swing harder when you play less and leave bigger spaces. When you just play quarter notes, for example, you'll get even more swing because people fill in the gaps. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, that's part of this whole thing of playing with intention. For our viewers out there who are interested in jazz or play it, something I've discovered, and this is just my own point of view, I don't know if it's true, but it seems to hold up. We tend to define jazz as being triplet based. And so if our quarter note pulse is here, jazz we da 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 da, as opposed to do do da da do do da boom ba boom boom, or do 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 whatever kind of style.
Sure.
So the subdivision kind of defines the style of music. Yet if I were to sing like something that sounded like a Charlie Parker solo, Charlie Parker was a great alto saxophone player and composer who pretty much defined bebop. So it would sound like, or Back Home Again in Indiana, which was the basis for Donna Lee. Now, except for those, here's a good word, appoggiaturas, those little ornamentation, there's no triplet in there. What I am doing is I'm accenting the offbeat, and I'm singing it legato. I'm not ta 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 ta, because everyone would recognize that's Squaresville. It doesn't swing. So a lot of what's happening with jazz is you have legato phrasing, and I try to teach legato drumming to my students. And of course you have to be aware of the subdivision, and the ride cymbal beat, the ding, ding, a ding, is more or less triplet based. You combine that triplet with the do ba do ba do ba do da 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 da, and there's this delicious little bit of tension, rhythmic tension. That's what sparks the music forward. So it's not just the fact that we've got a swinging 2 and 4. So that the way that fabric is woven, to me, is really fascinating. That's part of the whole thing of playing with intention. So if I'm playing just quarter notes, ding, 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 if I'm thinking of what I'm going to have for lunch today, or thinking of ding, duck, duck, ding, ding, duck, ding, ding, duck, duck, that's going to make these quarter notes come out different than if I'm thinking ding, ding, ah, ding, ah, ding, ah, ding, ah. So even when you don't play that, if it's part of the intention, it feels like the intention.
Mm-hmm.
Just like when you say something to someone.
Sure.
What's the intention? People, they get it. They read it right away. That's all it is.
Right, right. Fascinating.
Really?
I think so.
Okay.
So I like to ask when I have musicians of your level, very high level musicians come in, what is it that makes a great musician?
The ability to listen. A 4-letter answer.
Right.
It's a new day.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. Short and sweet.
Yeah,
Right.
there we go.
So aside from listening, what is it you look for when you're choosing members to work on a project with you, band members, other musicians?
The first word that came to mind was vocabulary. Their musical vocabulary, which is going to reflect their musical experience and what kind of choices they make. When a drummer sits down and plays, I can usually tell in about 2 seconds how they sound, what they're capable of. Just in the touch, the sound they get from the cymbals, the balance on the kit, and the space between the beats. With a bass player, I'm looking for someone that has really dependable time, someone that pays attention to what I'm playing. Generally, that means they're watching. They're not playing like this, but they're looking at what we're doing or what I'm doing. Good note choices. And also someone who doesn't Mickey Mouse the musical moment. You know, if I start doing something, it's not a signal like, oh, for them to do that too. I do that because they're already doing this.
Right.
You do this, and I'll do that, or you do that, and I'll do this, and vice versa. I try to honor that. So, a musician who seems to have at least enough experience to have developed a vocabulary, and someone who listens, who responds, but responds by not just repeating back to me what they've just heard, but contribute something to the conversation.
Right. Awesome.
And also, someone who's not a jerk. Years ago in Weather Report, Joe asked me about the way, how did someone play? And I said, oh, he plays good. I said, he's a nice guy. And Joe immediately jumped on me and bellowed, I don't give a blank if he's a nice guy. I asked, how does the blank blank play? Oh. And I get that, but it is important when you're working with other people, whether you're trying to become a member of a group or you're just sitting in at a jam session, what's the protocol, what are good manners? Or you're brought into a project in Los Angeles, a lot of cities. So much recording is done in people's second bedrooms now, but still in Los Angeles we have large studios that are operating and we do film and TV work as well as albums. As soon as I get back to LA, I'm doing a Christmas album with Patrick Williams.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fun. The Christmas albums are almost always done in June and July. There are plenty of good musicians waiting to have their chance. And you can't be a jerk.
Right.
One of the greatest lessons, it was a gift from a producer who called me up. It was one of my first recording sessions in New York. And he said, I just wanted to tell you that your bullshit jazz attitude was a complete drag last night, and I didn't appreciate it. And I was shocked because I thought I had played well. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I had to admit, he was right. I was trying to be a smart aleck, saying too much. You get in a situation, just try to pay attention, listen to what others have to say. Now, when it's your own album, all mayhem can break loose. But my goal is if I'm called in to do an album or a film or whatever, that when I walk out the door, the engineer's happy, he's got a smile on his or her face, producer, the artist, the conductor, the other musicians.
Sure.
That's the job. So it's not that it pays to be nice, but you're being professional, being courteous. Just like everyone here. You wouldn't I don't think you would tolerate anyone if they were really made life misery for everyone else, right?
It's a lot more fun when it's fun, right?
Sure. and I've only run into nice people here
Great.
so
That's
far.
Right. I think that'll continue.
Yay.
So to wrap things up, you have Dr. is out. You're working on the new recording project. You're doing some symphony gigs, and you're working on some apps. You've got a couple of apps out along with your instructional DVDs and
I
books.
should have brought I do have my iPhone over there, but suffice to say, without showing you, created a series of play-along apps. Now, most Music minus one, like an album, it'd be music minus drums. And of course, on a phonograph record, they couldn't supply a click, and it was very frustrating when I was younger to get these big open holes. And no matter what you did, it never seemed like it. I don't even know if they recorded with a click. I could never get it to come out right. And in the realm of big bands, very limited, maybe minus lead trumpet. But not everyone's cut out or wants to be a lead trumpet player. So we started off small, doing piano trio stuff. So these function not only as music minus piano, bass, or drums, or any combination thereof. You could solo a track if you wanted to really study the shape of the bass notes, the envelope, what I'm doing with the brushes or sticks. But you could also use these as karaoke of sorts. You could be a vocalist or any instrumentalist and play along. And these aren't MIDI recordings. These are real, the best musicians I know, really great musicians playing this music.
Right.
Bob Mintzer, who I've known since high school at Interlochen Arts Academy, I've known this guy since 1969, we decided to make a big band play along. And we wanted it to be able to do all the things that other big band play along projects didn't seem to offer. So we have music minus one or play along capabilities or functions. First trumpet, second trumpet, first trombone, bass trombone, lead alto, first tenor, baritone sax, piano, bass, drums, guitar, percussion. And again, you can solo certain things if you really want to hear the way someone's playing. How do the first and second trumpets support one another and interact, etc.
Right.
And the apps feature the music that can be emailed or printed out. You can also record yourself within the app and then send it to your teacher. In fact, if a school system wanted to get the app, if all their iPads were registered under one account, Apple account, they only have to get the app once.
Nice.
And so, we try to make it, and the Big Band app is free. You get 2 songs, and then there are in-app purchases for the additional 8 songs. Remarkable developer, a guy named Lucas Ives, who is a software engineer in the Bay Area, but he's also a drummer.
Right.
And he's figured out all the knots and hurdles to make this thing work. So it's really been fun, and so part of what we want to do with some of the music we're recording here, and then repurposing some of the music from the first Dr. album, is to create a Dr. play along. But we have Jazz Essentials 1, Jazz Essentials 2, the Joy Luck recording of my new trio, Afro-Cuban Essentials, Mintzer Big Band Essentials, and we repurposed David Garibaldi's Code of Funk. And that's remarkable, that you can take his tracks and solo just the snare drum to hear how he's ghosting the notes. So that's, I think, 6, and this will be number 7. And yeah, we're quite enthused by that. I'm one of those guys, just like most of you out there, decided to put out his own recordings.
Right.
And we started the Fuzzy Music label some time ago now. We have about, I think, 22 albums. Vanity endeavor to be sure, but the democratization that's taken place, and thanks to a company like Sweetwater, which makes it possible. I mean, this was unthinkable not too long ago.
Right.
To have this kind of recording capability and sophistication within reach.
Right.
I mean, I remember the first digital multi-track machines. When the first 3M machine came to L.A., and it was a wonder, and it was a disaster, and it was just always breaking down and falling apart.
Right.
I used to have a lovely full head of hair. When I got my first Mac in 1985, it was the 512.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the second Mac that came along. Didn't have an external drive, so you had to do everything with floppies.
Sure.
And I was using MIDI software that was developed by the Southworth.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Total Music? I think was the name of it.
I think so.
But so you would save, Command S save. But if you didn't eject the floppy and then reinsert it, it really wasn't saved. It wasn't written. And if, even though you saved it, it didn't finalize the writing
Right.
unless you ejected the disk. So you'd be working on something, you just get in the flow of it. Yeah, great. And then all of a sudden, the computer would become overwhelmed, or there's some bad code or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd lose all your work. So I started pulling out my hair. So what little hair I have left now will remain intact.
Excellent.
Thanks to the hard work of people like you, Mitch. Thank you.
Well, it's our pleasure. Thanks so much for coming in.
My great pleasure.
It's been,
Thank you all.
been great to have you here. We're excited to hear the recordings, and you got so much. You're a busy guy. You got so much going on.
Yeah, a bit. I'm driving down to Nashville tomorrow morning.
Nice.
I'll do a drum clinic there, and then I'm going to hook up with my good buddy Seth MacFarlane. I'm not just name dropping. I'm proud to call myself a member of his rhythm section, and Seth likes to travel around with various orchestras and present the music, mostly that Sinatra sang, but stuff that was arranged by the likes of Nelson Riddle, Gordon Jenkins, Billy May. And the thrust of the show, even though he's very entertaining, a lot of jokes, he features the arrangers and the arrangements. He loves this music. And the chance to discover all these gems, some that I heard when I was young, but many I'd never heard. It's a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to a summer of doing several more dates with Seth, and then get ready for the next school year and
Right.
fitting everything else in.
All right. Wonderful. Well, best of luck with it all.
Thanks, Mitch.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
And please come back and visit again soon.
I will.
Look forward to it.
Let's give everyone a peace out.
There we go. Peace out.
Vote.
I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.